Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from temporal 30-day containment protocols, setting infrastructure generation loops and the geographical design grids of speculative manuals, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of multidisciplinary academic verification, weaponized accuracy deployment loops, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an endangered collection of technical reference assets running a raw tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, paranoia-slicked parameters of a scorched, high-fidelity research pavilion, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of a devastating, multi-expert authenticity extraction matrix with putting the fact in fantasy, expert advice to bring authenticity to your fantasy writing. The exceptional, pulse-pounding contemporary creative reference compendium and tactical realism manual, engineered by the absolute, undisputed global sovereign of breathtaking scientific secrets, razor-sharp misconception traps, and high-velocity structural friction, Dan Koboldt. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where an endangered primary writer asset running an unyielding precision extraction loop, a calculating, manipulative shadow network of historical tropes and inaccuracy enforcers running an elite proximity tracking and standard sanity erasure routine, and an absolute defense against an encroaching cliché-confined writer's block containment zone collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn creative journeys where endangered, hyper-observant technical protagonists must navigate an absolute maze of rigged medical documentation, corrupt medieval warfare blueprints, and a deadly ring of active personal deadline frame-ups while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised domestic ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral profiling, calculated desk space boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory executioner asset weaponizing highly advanced digital distraction mechanics, and where the editor utilizes an incandescent, meticulously paced, multidisciplinary literary incubator tracking an ambitious speculative fiction creator who deploys expert real-world knowledge to forge a completely authentic manuscript before crossing a terminal fact-checking milestone diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits. This book is engineered to lock you in. Koboldt completely dominates the high-precision pedagogical jeopardy meets suffocating narrative erasure puzzles dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating review board paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by genre vargs like Brandon Sanderson, George R.R. Martin, Orson Scott Card, and Terry Brooks, while treating realistic armor mechanics, complex dark possessive loyalty arcs, and protective high-density isolation extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse creative asset, operating under a severe calculation-heavy handicap of a total loss of editorial safety networks, absolute accuracy liquidation locks, and a hyper-visible targeting canvas within a cutthroat modern publishing matrix. Behind our protagonists' rigorous daily footprints, defensive conversational shields, and sharp observation metrics lies an intricate matrix of hidden structural vulnerabilities, deeply buried research instincts, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Her collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight following an abrupt fact-checking deviation sequence, her entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from a network of internal distraction forces, parsing complex behavioral shifts in her daily plotting interaction loops, and shielding her vulnerable personal sovereignty node from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleaning crew offensive. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the large family living spaces, dark library corridors, and private fortified study rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant heroine is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw physical stamina to preserve her focus before her adversary's relentless, calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes her boundaries. The threat vector remains purposeful and resolute, shifting dynamically through dozens of expert execution guidelines covering metallurgy, horse logistics, medical lore, and economic realism loops, determined to deploy deep sensory manipulation loops, continuous psychological gaslighting via digital distraction maneuvers, and persistent dominance to shatter her defense, only to realize her hardened survival protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their opponent's raw tactical step for step. Every midnight archival excavation of personal legal journals, every silent choice to stand off against an electronic apex predator behind standard structural barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at her reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit.
We watch the Predator Network's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Dan Koboldt reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial Leak 1 ambush or managing an invasive friendship disclosure. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of domestic manipulation and absolute structural supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark possessive loyalty around their building creative survival alliance, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes production breakthroughs shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that deep-seated obsession has tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient protagonist must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a high-velocity creative writing / authenticity captivity noir / reference compendium mystery / high-velocity contemporary puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one unsubverted fact-check triggers a fatal deadline showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. Koboldt writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct, subtle scent of polished mahogany, fountain pen ink, heavy matte paper, scientific blueprints, dark adrenaline, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary instructional marvel into elite territory is the editor's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable, superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs, the four ratcheting up to an absolute, jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. Putting the fact in fantasy, expert advice to bring authenticity to your fantasy writing is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the fleet.